I've started recording. So Rob, go.
What?
Oh,
What's going on?
We've started, mate.
Oh,
You're
oh, I
intro
didn't
boy,
know
aren't you?
that. Oh, yeah. We're whatever we're on now. I've completely forgotten.
8, 9,
Um,
eight, eight.
week 8 or 9. Week 8 because the trade deadline's just closed. And
Yes.
most importantly, the Raiders are free from the tyranny of bloody McDaniel, who's been
Oh,
on them for so long. But there we go. We're free. Devontae Adams, he'll get better.
I've got
I don't want to talk any more about Devontae Adams today, but
What should we say now? It's like a shun.
no, I don't want to hear his name at
Okay,
all. I
cool.
want you
Right,
to
it's
bleep it
banned.
out if someone says it.
Oh.
Because...
All right. So I'm starting us off, am I? So I'll just pick whatever games I like, I reckon. Actually, no, I'll go from the bottom up, just because I'm at the top of the list. So if we're starting off this week with quite a bleak affair, and that's Johnny's thumping of the Greenwood Grenadiers. Let's be honest. Like, going.
Why is it bleak?
I mean, it's always bleak for someone. Oh, hi, Mum.
I feel like this was the first Clash of the Titans of the season, I think.
Well, it didn't end up, but it's like when Man City beat like whoever's like second or third, 4-5-0. It's not like a What are you
No,
doing?
I was behind Miles up until this week.
Can you do it in a bit? Yes, please. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll do it. If you want. Oh, I'll break them. Okay, brilliant. All right. All right. Sorry.
No.
Oi, get up, Rufus.
Very happy to spend longer on this particular
Rufus,
subject.
get out. Honestly, sorry. Rufus came down and just laid down on the floor, like just like tried to go for a nap. But anyway, yeah, continuing on. Like I mean, everyone performed for the Hearts Hogs this week, it would seem.
There are a few that I think are worth commenting on. Because...
Well, you go ahead, because you're the best.
Well, I'll tell you the people I'd like to hear your comments on.
Right.
And I'll tell you what, I'll throw in a couple that potentially are more disappointing as well. So actually, I'm going to give you like 4 or 5 people. AJ Brown, briefly, who we mentioned last week, but just give me a latest tap-in opinion. Jahmyr Gibbs, Trey McBride, Chris Olave, and Drake London.
I want to speak about Gibbs, so Rob, so you can talk about AJ Brown.
Oh God, why do I have to do that? Sure. Right, do you want to do Gibbs first?
Briefly, very briefly.
Briefly, yeah.
You want me to go talk about AJ
Yeah,
Brown?
you do Brown first, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, what is there to talk about? He's, I think it's fair to say he is well in the discussion for being the best receiver in the league right now. He's just playing out of his bloody mind. Feels like every week we say that. But yeah, I think at a certain point, a player gets enough 130-yard games in a row for you to think, yeah, he might be in the top sort of 1 or 2.
Yeah, it's nice. It's a bit unfortunate for Devontae Smith, who's not been getting absolutely anything for whatever reason.
He's been kind of continuing with what he did a bit last year, of just some hot streaks, some down streaks. He just has been. I think AJ Brown's very much made it, the alpha and the beta. Whereas at the start of the year, there was more of a conversation of kind of a 1A, 1B, and that's just the way it is. I don't know if it's entirely unpredictable that it's happened this year, because obviously they had a much easier schedule last year. So if you remember, like the first team were getting withdrawn by the end of the third quarter. So I guess the fact they're having to pass, late into the game and go for deep shots and stuff seems to be working out. But
it always feels like they're in close games, the Eagles, but they always manage to get through them. I'll talk about Gibbs. Like, he's obviously a really, really good player, but I will say, I do think this may have, like, these 2 weeks he just had are going to be, fantasy-wise, his best 2 of the year. Because I still I do think that Montgomery is going to come back and just keep doing what he was doing, and that's because they were even when the Lions were in the red zone, they were still trying to pound out the middle with Craig Reynolds, and it just wasn't working. And so that may result in I'm not saying Gibbs is going to go down. It's like a 5-point game every week, because I think he might get better than that. but the Lions have a good enough offense for both players to be getting 10 points a week. But I still think Montgomery's going to get the easy touchdown scores, whereas like Gibbs is going to be relying on more of a splash play, just sort of like, for example, breaking that 25-yard touchdown run.
Yeah,
and he's really good, and I don't think he's a bad player at all. But I do think there will be a cap on how good he can be.
It'll be interesting to see going forward. In that, what was impressive the last couple of weeks is he did some of the down the middle stuff, which I genuinely didn't think it was like in his game at all. Obviously, I'm certain that they'd prefer to use Montgomery for that, and they used Craig Reynolds for it a lot last week. After the last couple of weeks, you've got to imagine that I mean, they were always going to feature him in their game plan. They spent an early first on him, so long as he basically didn't do what Swift did, given that opportunity, which is kind of get injured, be inconsistent, make mistakes alongside the big plays. And I think what's most encouraging about the last couple of weeks is with a big workload, he's not had a fumble, he's not had a turnover, he's been, and I think that as well as the big play stuff, which we kind of knew was there, it's good. I think it incrementally increases how he will do rest of season, as in he will be a fraction better than he has been so far, even with Montgomery back. And so not expecting 25 points every week, but I think it means he'll be very usable.
Yeah, I agree. It was London, the other one you said?
London, Olave, and McBride. Only because I'm sure my brother. No, I know. It's because I wanted to say London and Olave because I mean I can say something on it, and it's been disappointing, and it's kind of hot and cold form, and obviously they're both extremely high draft picks in real life, and they've had great performance weeks. But I think maybe there's a little bit of a difference there, which is that Olave, it just feels like he's getting deep shots from Derek Carr, and he has had some good weeks this year, but he hasn't had the touchdowns, and it's just not quite clicked. I feel like that's a temporary thing, but I was interested to see what you guys thought. And with London,
I think both of them have a similar issue in that, like, so for example, they're not the kind of receiver, like, obviously they get targets, but they're not like big yak players, right? I don't watch the Saints much, so I'm not an expert, Johnny. But like Olave is not the kind of guy you would you would just throw a screen to that he might break big. Am I correct? He's not that kind of receiver. So like the issue is that Olave and London, I think, it feels like they need to be like targeted in the middle of the not long throws, not short throws, but middle of the field throws. And I just think both of them have terrible quarterbacks, and not decent offenses. Yeah. And I think like hopefully Atlanta will bring in someone better than Ridder in the offseason, and then I think like maybe next year he'll be a lot better.
I think much more important is whether they make a coaching change, and that'll be interesting because basically if they capitulate second half of the year, which it feels like the last few weeks, there's some other teams are basically finding out Arthur Smith a little bit, and they could have a capitulation second half of this year, and Smith could be gone by the end of the year because he's been given at least 2 years now, isn't he? Maybe 3. So that'll be interesting, but I see it's a little bit different. London is I think of him as like, if you know Mike Evans' game, because we've watched him for a little bit longer, he is quite similar to Mike Evans. He has this ability to go up and get really hard contested catch, and he's an early first round draft pick. He has some after the catch ability, but it's not his specialty.
Yeah, it's forte.
But he could be an incredible receiver with a good quarterback, but in the current scheme it's difficult because he's making a lot with very little he's making something with very little at the minute, but if given much, then he could be really, really good. Olave, I disagree in that I actually think he is quite a good yards after catch player. We're just not getting him open looks at the minute. He's unbelievably fast. He was like he had one of the fastest 40-yard dashes of combine.
I mean, I'm sure he's really good. He's an Ohio State receiver, right? So he's unbelievable, and he had a really good season. Like,
I don't think I've seen anyone more than Chris Olave appear on Red Zone, where it flashes up to a Saints game, just looking angry and like the ball not really going where he wants it to go. It consistently. I see Olave popping up, and it's like, and that's overthrown out wide to Olave. Like,
yeah,
I don't think he's getting overthrown a ridiculous
concerned.
amount because Carver's a good quarterback, but yeah, I just seem to keep seeing it.
I think I'd be more concerned if he hadn't proved already. But I think he's going to have an awful lot of patience from them, and they'll work it out. But
yeah,
London's maybe a little bit different in that it's a bit kind of the ceiling's still very, very high, but it's just can it work out? And then we don't need to talk about McBride. But I was going to get Rob.
Nice week for him. I'll give you that.
Fan.
Nice week. Yeah.
I have high hopes for the future. I won't be trying to trade him away for a third or a fourth as I was in the off-season, put it like that.
All right. And then looking towards Miles' team, I mean, they're pretty much a down week for a number of players. I mean, Stiggs and Zay Flowers and Kirk combining for 14 in total. So never ideal. Not a bad showing for the running backs room, however. White and Jacobs having a decent showing. Jacobs had a nice game, I thought. And obviously, me. And obviously, Mahomes had like his worst career game in like 5 years or something. So, not much to talk about there. Is that right? I mean, I think I saw something about that. Like the first time he's lost to Denver, like ever, right?
He certainly didn't have a good game. It's the first time they've lost by how many scores was it in the end? It was by more than 5. I think it's the first time they've lost in.
Well, he had a little
3 years or 4 years.
I saw a good meme. It was like, Mahomes when he has the flu. It's like, oh, my precious. And it's like Joe Burrow and his calves like in 2 pieces. Like, you fucking donkey. So yeah.
Oh, dear.
That's Mahomes though to make himself play when he's not fit to play. No.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I feel like most.
I've got that dog in me. I can do it. He's awful.
I think I was going to say Josh Jacobs. Let's hope that the coaching staff change in Las Vegas produces more performances like this one, because Jacobs looked really good actually.
Well, do you remember when they had Bisaccia for that? When they had Bisaccia for that half of the season, they made the playoffs. It was like they like beat the Chargers to the playoffs on the final day because they could have drawn the game and they both would have got in, but then they just kicked a field goal and went back to the Chargers and made it through. Which I thought was quite funny. So maybe there might be like a random mid-season turnaround for the Raiders, and they may not be quite up near the quarterback picks that they may want to.
I don't know. Jimmy G is crap.
Aidan O'Connell's coming in. Aidan O'Connell's coming in. I saw.
Is that been announced?
Chucked him on the taxi, guys. He's been confirmed as the starter.
That's exciting.
And the one bright light as well.
Well, he's available for a 4th round draft pick.
I'm not going to say the name of he who must not be named in this episode, but watching Jimmy Garoppolo overthrow 2 just walk-in long touchdowns to him was crushing.
So funny. Jesus. He is awful now. He's getting worse and worse. It is.
Dreadful.
It's odd,
I doubt he'll get another job after this in the NFL. He won't get a starting gig.
It definitely was his last chance. I feel like. There's always that one team that just can't get anyone though, so he might end up just like. Trying to think who
there's plenty of guys who you'd take ahead of him. I'd take Josh Dobbs ahead of him any day of the week.
Well, he would now. Yeah, he's where he's been playing. I'm actually kind of I was really. I thought it was a great move by the Vikings to bring him in. So but I don't know who's got Dobbs. Is it Bates or someone?
$80 Dobbs, mate.
It's quite reliable.
He should definitely be nicknamed that $80 Dobbs. But yeah,
$80 Dobbs. Wow. Is there anyone that we specifically want to chat about a bit more detail on Mars' team?
I'd say maybe to be good.
Yeah. And I'll focus on his 2 wide receivers, in that Zay Flowers had a down week. It's an interesting one. I don't want to jump in and be really negative about, because there's other players I feel much more positive about. But it's interesting because I feel like he had a really good and exciting start to the year, and maybe we would have kind of collectively been thinking of him as maybe the best rookie wide receiver out of this class if you'd asked us in week 3 or so. Yeah. Obviously, not including Puka
Nacua, yeah, of course.
But then we've kind of had the routes he's running, even though he's getting schemed up. A lot of them are schemed up specifically for him, and they're getting him involved. That is a lot of short stuff, so he's completely reliant on yards after the catch to develop any kind of long yardage, which means if the offense is playing really well, he can have big games. But if the offense is really struggling and getting closed down, he basically is a slightly glorified version of what's his name, Rondale Moore. And it'll be interesting. I'm interested to see how he goes, but I'm not so 100% confident in him as I was maybe a month ago.
I think his big issue as well is sorry, Rob.
I didn't realise he had 5 receptions for 19 yards.
That is impressive, isn't
it? That almost deserves a reward.
It's a similar situation though in Baltimore to KC, in that it feels like just most of the touchdowns go to the tight end. So his upside is sort of tapped by that. Because as long as Mark Andrews is playing for Baltimore with Lamar Jackson, you're not going to get the majority of the touchdowns, it feels like. So obviously, like, you know, he's still going to be good. But I feel like while Zay Flowers may be a good fantasy wide receiver, I think he's never going to be a top sort of 5-10. And if he does, it'll be like his best season. Because whilst Mark Andrews is there, it feels like it's capped.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But Stephon Diggs will have much better weeks.
Oh,
he has
yeah.
done most this year. It was an watching that game Friday morning after the Thursday night game. It was like the perfect game script for me, in that Josh Allen was balling out, and Stephon Diggs, just every time they got down near the red zone, it was going to someone else. So that's not normal. It was just very rare. It happened this week. Yeah, exactly. Right, let's move on to a different matchup.
Okay, so we had the Ramsey Rioters taking on the Cook 69ers. Ramsey Rioters now sat 4-4, while Cook has continued his run. It's now 7-1. The mid-season slump has not quite arrived, as some of us may thought. Not his biggest week this week, 107 points. We'll start off with him. Lamar only 10 points, but McCaffrey, you know, still coming in with big numbers once again. Most of it with a modest game by his standards this year. Kelsey made his debut for the team, but then Gus Edwards another big week. Annoyingly, 3 touchdowns. The second I traded him away, he's had like the 2 best ever games. So there you go.
What are you trading for? A
third round pick? Yeah.
Oh Jesus.
Oh well. Win some, you lose some. But yeah, no, good for Ben. I mean, if Gus Edwards continues to score 20 points a week, I'll be very, very sad. But we'll have to see how that goes. I mean, you know, if it gets him on the way to a championship, then good for him.
They don't play Arizona every week, though.
That is true. And it was weird. They've literally been. I've seen the amount of times Gus Edwards was on my team, and they'd be at the goal line, and it'd be like first and goal at the 2, and he just gets stuffed every single time. And then like the second he goes to another team, he's just breaking through for touchdowns. But anyway, rest of his team. I mean, let's be honest, Gus is the standout performer here. I mean, no one else really did anything massive apart from McCaffrey, but like he's just, you know, he's churning along, getting a result there with a decent score.
I want to say, at what point does Kyle Shanahan need to be investigated for like abuse to his employees? Because
you listen to the same podcast as me, Rob.
This is true. He just refuses to take off his best players.
No, it wasn't. It was so funny at the end of that game. And I wonder whether if Callum's watching, whether he was watching that live, because that must have killed him. They were down like 2 scores, weren't they? And the final play of the game, they did a dump off to McCaffrey, which ran for like 25 yards because they were on like 4th down and 40 or something stupid. It was so bizarre. And at some point, someone's going to get injured.
Yeah, I mean, like, think about how stupid you'd feel as Kyle Shanahan if just like McCaffrey gets fucking bulldozed by like Jermaine Pratt, and he like just, you know, it could be anything, and he this is ridiculous.
Defies belief, because you've got a couple of decent running backs just behind him. They're not anything special, but just give them some of the
reps,
some of the chances to get their head caved in.
Jesus, yeah,
crazy.
Yeah, I mean, moving over to the Ramsey Rioters, I mean, it's definitely one of Callum's lower scoring weeks, but it doesn't feel like anyone Jacoby Myers with only 19 yards this week is big performer so far. All my sleepers lagged out. His big performer on the season so far. Well, I'm in the wrong season now. I think I was watching this stream. I mean, what's going on?
Jacoby Myers,
Jacoby,
and Michael. What's his name? Is it Michael Myers? What's his name? Not Mike Myers.
Mike
What's their
Myers?
tight end called?
Michael Mayer.
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 Well, two big Raiders getting 19 yards.
Right,
I know he's not even in this matchup. We'll talk about him later, but yeah, it was just collectively a terrible showing.
Yeah, I mean the Raiders are just a shit show. Let's be honest.
I mean, it was more yards than
Jacobs. Josh
he who
Jacobs
must not be named.
Great performance. Then you're outperforming him every week. Then he must be doing pretty well.
Is it worth mentioning that Zach Moss just won't go away?
Yeah, it's so annoying. Still outscoring Taylor on fantasy somehow.
Did you guys, if you watched that live, it was so frustrating. There was two things that happened that were so frustrating. Firstly, Taylor I think he broke like a 20-yard run or 20-yard catch or something, and then like a 40-yard run, and got them right up to the red zone. And it was right at the start of the game, so it was like, yes. And then I'd just gotten home, tuned in to watch it, and saw bloody Zach Moss lining up in the red zone. They're on like the 5-yard line. He proceeded to get stuffed, I think 3 times, at least twice out of the 3 downs they tried, and they ended up kicking it. What was the most bloody depressing thing is he continued to have like these awful players, and you're kind of watching it being like, this guy's shit, why are they giving him a chance? And then later on in the game, out of completely nowhere, he burst like some massive run. It was like an 80-yard run or something. And I know that means that everyone watching the highlights back and the Colts coaching staff, when they watch it back, will be like, yeah, Zach Moss, explosive. Yeah. I was like, not only is he doing it and looking shit, but then he actually has the cheekiness to go and actually put in a good run as well. But I don't know how long he can keep it up for. Presumably,
it's like end of the season, surely. Like, we're not going to see Zach Moss. Like, it should get worse and worse. But like, I don't know. Like, if the Colts are just a good running team, there's no reason why he can't.
That's the thing, is they're rushing it so well.
Yeah, so then that's not going to stop either player getting points.
No. Yeah. And actually, saying it, it's not that I don't think at this point he's harming Jonathan Taylor, because to be honest, if you have a player break a big run like that, then it doesn't matter if it's Zach Moss or someone else on the bench. It's completely normal for somebody to be taken out for a bit. But
and he's potentially
see how long he can be useful for.
protecting JT's longevity, like potentially, which is something that Kyle Shanahan does not want to do, apparently.
He doesn't know what longevity means.
He's like, what?
Talking of longevity and protecting longevity, how do you feel seeing Zach Charbonnet eating into Kenneth Walker's
tasty. It's good. Yeah. Well, I was a bit late getting, because usually I watch Red Zone all the way through because I've just got no life. But I actually had something to do this Sunday, so I was late getting back, so I didn't see all of Red Zone. And I was like, Charbonnet's actually getting a few carries here. Very interesting. Like, Kenneth Walker, 8 carries. I mean, for 66 yards, could have quite efficient. But it's nice to see Charbonnet getting a chance, and maybe by the end of the year he could be a viable starting option. Maybe going into the playoffs if I do get myself in there. So that'd be nice.
Have to wait and see. But I've been made to look like a bit of a prize fool so far this season in terms of, well, I guess I got a good price for him, but Kenneth Walker would have been very useful to my team's struggles in the early
I think you may have been 8-0 if you'd had Kenneth Walker on your team. Or it would have been very close.
Precisely, right? And I think that the reason I was prepared to trade him as opposed to, I probably wouldn't have been on any terms prepared to trade him before the off season because of how well he did for me at the end of last year and being as young as he was this potential situation with Charbonnet. So we'll have to wait and see. I mean, Walker could not have looked better, and he's corrected some of the issues statistically that he had in his rookie season when he was very inefficient in short yardage in the red zone, particularly. So that isn't so much of an issue anymore. But basically, if Charbonnet looks as good as he did at the weekend, you can't imagine he's going to disappear anytime soon.
Yeah, they don't want to not give him reps because he's a good player. So there you go.
Whatever works for the team.
Do you want to start us off, Rob, with the this next game I've got up on the screen?
Which game are we on?
Crystal Mercer.
Yes, there we go. Charlie, God, who would have thought that he'd be putting up 110 points on on any week this year, let alone on a semi-regular basis.
Yeah, twice, 2 weeks in a row, he's had a last-minute comeback victory.
I mean, we'll
against
see.
Forlots.
There's two major takeaways from this week for Charlie, I think. Number one, just CeeDee Lamb being incredible. And I'd seen that the Rams hadn't given up a touchdown to a single receiver this year. And then they gave away 3 to the Cowboys, 2 of which went into the waiting arms of CeeDee.
That's quite impressive, by the way.
It's very impressive.
7 weeks of football.
But arguably
considering
more,
they've had like no one in the secondary.
in an arguably more devastating twist, Kirk Cousins and his Achilles will be leaving Charlie's team for the rest of the season. Leaving, what is it, just Bryce Young on the bench to replace him?
Yeah.
Well, but chiming in here, this is particularly devastating because having been watching Charlie's team and hoping for it to perform, and also having been beaten by him earlier in the year, the double combination of Jordan Addison and Kirk Cousins has been a killer. So the loss of Kirk Cousins isn't only a killer in terms of quarterback production, but also in terms of Addison, because I can't imagine Dobbs is going to maintain that.
What you mean? It's like for like?
Crucially, Addison's production or his big games have come off the back of big, deep bombs and big touchdowns where he scored big points all in one go, and he's done that multiple times this year. So can't see that coming too frequently moving forward.
It is just crushing the Kirk Cousins injury. Like, I was seeing, I was reading about just how well liked he is in the Vikings dressing room, and it might just be an absolute hammer blow to them.
Does anyone else just think he'll re-sign? By the way, I don't know. I feel like he will.
With the Vikings, I mean,
I think he will.
You could make the case if you're a Vikings fan. Why wouldn't you go all out and just? Why not go for Caleb at this stage?
I don't know how they're going to get Caleb. They're not. They're like won a few games.
They're nowhere near.
They're nowhere near the top few great picks. They'd have to trade up and hope the team, the number 1 overall pick, will trade up. And if it is Chicago, they will not trade the pick to Minnesota.
Have you not seen what Arizona have been doing? They're going for Caleb.
I'm pretty sure they will. I'm pretty sure they'll play with Kyler Murray. I'm not taking the piss.
I think they will, but I think that if they get the first overall pick, they're in a perfect position to trade it to whoever they want in the league.
Raiders. I actually give my Raiders, Patriots, or Giants. They're the ones that are in the top 10 that are potentially, all the Bears. But I kind of prefer Drake May anyway. So.
Really? I'd say that there's several other players on Charlie's team who had really good weeks as well.
Yeah.
But also,
not least of which was Rashid Shaheed. I keep calling him, but his name is Shaheed. 3 catches, 158 yards.
He's been making the deep connections that I want for Olave.
21 points.
He's just, he's just a tiny player.
3 catches for 153 yards is hilarious.
Big fan of him.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Chris Dow.
Well, I was going to say, quickly worth noting for Charlie, firstly, that it's not his only injury problem because Darren Waller looks like he's going to be out for a little while now. Secondly, that James Cook now has the extra competition from Fournette in that backfield, who, whilst I think he'll largely be involved in the same kind of work that Latavius Murray was getting, he is a passing down specialist and therefore could potentially take some of the passing work away, which might potentially clip his wings. And lastly, I don't know whether this was an intentional decision or not, but you were asking why I put so much fab on.
Was it to deny Baker. Charlie getting?
No, not to deny him. I wanted Baker because I think he's got quite a nice matchup in the week that Allen has a bye week, and as we're getting closer to playoffs, whilst I initially doubted that Baker was going to be at all good, I thought it was going to be shit. He seems to have been doing consistently all right, so I wouldn't mind him as a backup. But I didn't like any of the other options on waivers. Maybe Carr, and I could kind of see him being taken. And I'll be honest with you, I assumed that Bates was going to go out and get a quarterback this week because until Josh Dobbs signed, I thought he was gone. And obviously Fields is also still out injured, and who knows exactly what's happened there. So I thought Bates was going to have to be bidding high, and he's got a history of doing that. I assumed Callum was because he told me he was going to. Obviously, he bid on almost every quarterback on waivers. Yeah. But if you're Charlie and you look at the quarterbacks on waivers now, like looking at it now, you've got Matt Stafford, who's not scored above 15 all season is averaging about 10.
He's injured as well.
Taylor Heineke, he's injured. Taylor Heineke, so Charlie's got a choice of Taylor Heineke, Mac Jones, Clayton Tune, Zach Wilson. Realistically, his best starting option now is Bryce Young.
He's got to trade
And
for
that
someone.
is not a situation you want to be in.
He's got to trade for someone, surely.
Wow, I mean,
Well, it depends.
Johnny,
Depends how serious.
There's someone in this call who has got 2 of the highest scoring quarterbacks this week. Probably won't be playing for him next week.
Who are we talking about?
Wait, 2 highest?
I mean, Sam Howell and Will Levis has got to be the
young guns slinging it, aren't they? 4
touchdowns.
touchdowns apiece. Unbelievable.
I wouldn't want to be starting Sam Howell rest of this season.
He's playing New England this week, mate. I would. New England, come on.
I think Sam Howell is somebody who's decent for regular season because he can put up.
Oh yeah, I agree.
But if you are using him in the playoffs, he's going to kill you 1 week, and
Oh,
there's
no,
not
absolutely.
a chance you're making it to the final.
Well, he's had 1 week where he scored below 10 points. Actually, 2 weeks. Actually, he did that -4 against Buffalo that 1 week. That was.
But I think the worst is
devastating.
coming. The worst is definitely coming. Quite apart from the injury risk, the number of.
I mean, he only
sacks.
had 1 sack this week, which is pretty amazing.
It's a miracle.
I don't know. Maybe you spotted that trade there. We'll just hope. But we'll have to move on from that.
What's happened?
Don't worry, mate. Don't worry about it. You can watch the video.
What?
I showed my trade screen, and there's a trade that I've sent out. Don't worry about it. But yeah, Chris Dow's team. Burrow's good. Finally, which is fantastic for him. But he is still 7-6.
He's eased into the season, isn't he?
Yeah, it might be, is it too late for Chris Dow though? That's one thing we could ask.
The thing is, he's put up big performances the last 2 weeks. He's just been unlucky. And if you're looking at the divisions, I don't think it's ever too late to not be the worst third place team. Because even now he's like a couple of losses behind Callum, a couple of losses behind Rob. And if you win your
he's
division
already
games, then...
he's third. He's 2 losses behind Ramsey and Rob. So
with the way that Callum's dropping like a fly, I would favour Crystal to make it over.
Yeah, it's definitely on the cards, isn't it? It's not impossible at all.
I mean, it's got to be said, he's got 3 receivers who are, I believe they're all 3 of them in the top 11 for scoring this year. Amon-Ra being the lowest one out of that because he missed a couple of games. But that's a pretty good call.
Adam Thielen.
Adam Thielen's wide receiver number 9 right now.
So
and
crazy.
The fact that he's gone for,
he's gone
for 9 catches and almost 80 yards, and that's a down week for him now. Like, he's almost having a career year. If
Crystal... I don't think it's pronounced Crystal, by the way. I believe it's pronounced Christy. Please correct me if I'm wrong, Lucas, because I'd love to. I'd like to be able to get that correct. But, no, Lucas. Anyway, I don't think Lucas listens to this, to be honest. But if he does, then I'm sure I'm not the only person who's reached out multiple times through the season about trade links, and he's in a position where if he wanted to make a trade, he could really put himself in a position to make a real push because he's got some. Well, but apart from anything else, he's got Kyler Murray on the bench, who may well be returning to play soon, and. If he wants,
sick, isn't it?
If he wants to move him and use it to shore up some of those options, particularly any of the options, I guess, because I guess Mattson struggled a bit, but you could say get any decent flex to continue working with around because those 3 receivers might not always be available or whatever. Like whatever he wants to do with it, he could have a very good team if these players stay healthy. So. Don't count them out.
Absolutely. Right. Should we move on to the Weights Wobblers versus the Hearthrobs? Rob's your own team, so why don't you walk us through it?
Nice, yeah. Decent week for me. Could have been much better. I think I was the least efficient manager this week. Largely down to DeAndre Hopkins, just what?
Yeah.
Like I took him out about 15 minutes before the games because I was just sat down looking at it and I was like, you know what? Like he's got a rookie quarterback. Probably not going to have an incredible week. He'll just have an average one. And then no, it turns out Will Levis is the man. and can absolutely sling it. But other than that, yeah, I'm fairly happy with my week. Obviously, there's some underperformances in there, Christian Watson and the man who shall not be named. But crucially, at least on my behalf, the guys I'm happy to be performing is Kincaid getting his first touchdown of the year. Just building on a good week last week to have an even better fantasy points-wise week this week. And then Travis just continuing to be incredible.
It's been very good, isn't it? Yeah.
He looked like he was finally having a down week, and then he just broke like a 60-yard touchdown.
Yeah.
Very good.
It definitely helps. I'm going to miss him next week. 3
players I want you guys to talk about. Can you talk about Brian Robinson, David Montgomery, who's obviously about to come back? I guess we kind of talked about Montgomery earlier, but also Watson again, because I feel like we're at a bit of a difficult point with Christian Watson, but then the other two are maybe looking a bit better.
Yeah, Christian Watson's a difficult one, I think. Talent-wise, there's no doubt in my mind that he is better than Jayden Reed and Romeo Doubs. Like, he just is. He's shown it more than them, and he showed it last year when he had a really good run of games to end the season. But he just hasn't shown it this year, and I think some of that is down to Jordan Love. A lot of it is down to the play calling. And he just hasn't looked as explosive as he did last year.
Yeah, it's a bit sad, really, because he's such a. I mean, like when he was playing really well last year, he was quite an exciting player to watch, wasn't he? So it was. Yeah,
it was immensely exciting. I think
it's not just Doubs. It's who's the other rookie they've got there?
Jayden Reed is played well as well,
but Jayden Reed's getting targets, and so is the tight end, whatever he's called,
Musgrave. But Christian Watson was the most targeted player for the Packers.
No, he's
this game just gone.
But it was last year. He simply did not have the target competition that he has now on a consistent basis.
I mean. Last year, he got most of his points through being ridiculously efficient on touchdowns. So in terms of his target share, it hasn't actually changed that much. I'm still optimistic that it will tick up for him because ultimately, I think talent wins out, and the Green Bay Packers are in desperate need of playmakers on their offense. And there's no one in that offense who can do the things that Watson can.
Absolutely fair. I mean, I think I'm as a Bears fan when they're playing Green Bay, I'm most worried about is Watson. I'm not like obviously reading that are good players, but I'm not like scared of them. And I feel like long term he has to be the guy. I don't know what the plan is in Green Bay, offense wise, coaching wise, what's going on. Because it's not going well right now, but it's, we're only just halfway through the season, if that. So we'll have to wait and see. I don't think we can come to a conclusion just yet on what's happening.
And there's so many young pieces there that there's a lot in flux. The only thing I know about Green Bay now is that I'm pretty sure AJ Dillon is shit. That's like the only thing I know for sure.
Yeah, he's not
a weird on AJ Dillon. He's just like I've never seen a guy that big who doesn't want to run into people. He just he plays like he should be like half the size that he is.
It's bizarre. This year has been so poor, and this was his contract year and everything as well. So, and everything you hear of the Packers in terms of the trade moves they've looked at and stuff in terms of running backs tells you that they've got no intention to re-sign him. So,
no, I think the trade, the only trade that the Packers have made before the deadline was trading away Russell Douglas, who, in my mind, that signifies that the Packers are just like, we're kind of done for this year.
Yeah. Right. Looking towards. Was there one more player?
Ronnie's lineup.
Yeah, Ronnie's lineup.
Looking at Ronnie's lineup. Oh, well, I was going to say you guys speak about Montgomery and Robinson, but I feel like
sort of.
Maybe we've touched on Montgomery before and what we're expecting, but Robinson, what do you think of Brian Robinson?
He's not been as good as I would have expected. He's not been as good as I would have expected. Underwhelming, but he's not been terrible. He's just been slightly below average, really, hasn't he? I swear. He's sort of been putting up sort of 7-8 points a game. It feels like.
Yeah, he has mostly. He's been he's been doing all right, you know,
Yeah.
and going against the Eagles and actually to rush for probably about 5.8-ish yards a carry it's pretty good, actually, and he is.
I disagree.
He's not
I think he's been really good.
He's not
He's
been.
a very talented player. He is a very talented player.
He's been taking like maybe half of the snaps, and he's a little bit game script dependent. He's been getting some receiving work through the air. He's been very efficient on the ground, or fairly efficient on the ground. And if you look at his fantasy numbers, he's the kind of person you're happy he started every week. You never regret it. And
I wouldn't. As someone who owns him on their team, haven't been happy starting him every week. I mean, I didn't start him this week for that reason. It's tricky sometimes when the game script doesn't look like it's going to be in his favour to consider starting him.
I know. I was saying to Rob before that I think that my concerns for him is the fact that this Washington, not even just the coaching staff or anything, like I don't know how long I think Rivera will be there for. I don't think they're playing well enough to justify him being there a long time. And obviously, they've got new ownership and everything now, so I wouldn't be surprised if they move on this summer. And he is a guy who's kind of Rivera's a massive fanboy of and really loves using him. So he's on the one hand he's young and I like the way he runs and he's showed some ceiling this year in terms of big week performances that I didn't know he necessarily had. But so he's definitely got some good value there. It's just he's not. I mean, how many running backs are completely safe? I guess in terms of their long-term value, but I could see him potentially struggling a bit if they change ownership, change coaching staff and everything like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Ronnie seems to have somewhat thrown the towel this year. Probably the first team to do so. Or the first team to obviously do so.
I don't know. Aiden probably ought to have done it a bit more overtly.
We definitely should now. Definitely should now. Yeah, I mean, Ronnie's team. I mean, I feel like we'll sort of like, this season's not over, but we'll sort of. Should we talk about the players that have sort of led to this point? I think it might be a good way to talk about it. And one of them that's standing out to me is Dameon Pierce. Like, Houston have really just been focusing on throwing the ball a lot, and that is sort of, despite Pierce being like the running back basically, like getting like 10 to 15, even like 24 carries a game, he's not really been producing at the level that Ronnie would have hoped, I imagine.
Well, it's now an outright split backfield as well.
Yeah.
I think Ronnie might have expected the Texans to be running it a lot more with a rookie quarterback, but CJ Stroud has just looked pretty decent.
Yeah, and they've
rather than looking decent, he's just looked a lot more experienced than he should do at this stage in his career.
Exactly.
So the Texans are seemingly very happy to just trust a pass-first offense to him.
Yeah, I mean, he's also injured now as well. It's not ideal. But that might be good for Ronnie. I don't think he's actually in possession of his first round pick, so we'll have to see who actually is. I'm not quite aware.
I believe it's Charlie Mercer.
Oh, well, Charlie might be very excited.
I actually, we can talk about it a little bit later, or maybe this week, maybe another episode.
Yes,
we finally get the chance to talk about rebuilding. But I think Charlie last off season pulled off a perfect demonstration of a quick rebuild, as in retool some pieces, keep some pieces based on what value you're getting, and it's meant that he's ended up with some excellent young players, which he didn't necessarily have before, and he also has this what looks like it could be a very high pick.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I will say about Ronnie's team, he probably needs to slightly start diversifying his team, because Bosa, San Fran, defense, and Moody, like back the boys, but to a certain extent, maybe get rid of one of them from the starting line.
Well, maybe he ought to go to Charlie, who's lacking a quarterback and running backs, and see whether there's some business that could be done to get his own first round pick back. That's an idea.
That'd be outrageous. That'd be outrageous.
I don't know if it would.
First round pick back.
If it was,
I would be hanging on to it like gold dust if I was Charlie, considering it looks like Ronnie is very much throwing in the towel and accepting that he will have a top 4 pick this year. Well, he won't, but that he will end up top 4 in all the other rounds. He's still holding on to Kamara, Herbert. Herbert obviously is a long-term piece. He's fine there. I mean, Cole Kmet's a solid tight end. He's young, and I think he's just been paid by the. I think he has been paid by the
Very
Bears.
heavily.
He only got Cole Kmet this week in his big trade.
Yeah, exactly.
with
Yeah,
Kelsey.
which we may chat about a bit later.
Got quite a promising young wide receiver room.
Yeah, it's
Just
not
needs a bit more
terrible.
time for them to get consistent.
I mean, Cortland Sutton's
Smith
a
and
bit
Jigba's
depressing, but yeah, a bit like you say, he's got JSN and Johnston. So, and Johnston actually got a few targets this week. So,
and
that's
he's
nice.
picked up Mingo in the trade last week, who could be a bit of a thing, and Collins is still young, so
has he taxied
there's some
Johnston?
promise there.
Even yesterday, I can't see him when it's.
Yeah, I think he has.
He has, yeah. I mean, he got five catches, which is his season high, I believe. On the and obviously it was the Bears, but it was also after Joshua Palmer got injured slightly, so we'll have to see how that develops. But he looked okay, so things looking up slightly for Ronnie in that department. And Johnny, why don't you finish us off for the week with the final two matchups? First, which is Aiden v Luke Simon and his sweethearts.
I've also just noticed, Rob, you and I have a basketball draft kicking off in 10 minutes. So
well, go for it. Go.
So I'll try and talk about individual players. I'll start with the sweethearts because they've won. It was a good performance of another excellent performance from Hurts. Bounce back performance from Joe Mixon. And it's nice to see that he can still have performances like this. And to be honest, the Bengals are looking so much better that I would expect Mixon to be a lot better second half of the year, which I think will be much appreciated because he's been very disappointed with the output from his running back room. Less encouraging, obviously, Tony Pollard. All the talk was that he was going to be, top 5 running back, potentially top 2 or 3.
He's been worse about Zeke there. And Kellen Moore.
I think it's not a new thing to see. He was an extremely efficient player because it was plays that were developed specifically for him. He wasn't having to do all the crunching work at the goal line. He's just not bringing those explosive plays the way he did or how frequently he did last year. So I guess he's coming off the injury as well. So whether that's playing into it, significant injury this offseason, but it's pretty tough. And then, I wouldn't want to be in Luke's position because every single week he's got, at least a couple of wide receivers who go off, and then at least a couple who disappoint. So fortunately, he stopped having feelings about Sky Moore, but it was a rare example of a week where he could be pleased with the two that he chose to start, despite the fact that Smith and Cooks both went off on the bench as well. So.
Smith got a second season high output, but he seems like he is potentially relying on touchdowns to get above 10 points a week, which is never ideal. But obviously, if AJ Brown's getting 8 targets for 160 yards on a touchdown, then never going to help, is it?
Tricky. I feel like Latavius Murray's probably done now that the Nets in Buffalo. Kamara's taken all the work in New Orleans, so he might be in need of a bit more running back depth, maybe before we see the end of the season. And again, at this point in the year where there are genuine contenders who are completely desperate at quarterback, Luke's one of those teams who has a really excellent depth in quarterback. So if somebody makes him a very tempting offer for Tua, particularly if it involves a running back that can really do something for him, then potentially he'd be tempted into making a move.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as well, trying to think, what was that? Josh Downs has looked really good. Luke only had 2 picks in the whole of the rookie draft, but both of them have turned out to be okay. I mean, Downs is looking like he'll end up being a really good receiver in Indianapolis alongside Pittman. He's sort of had that production that some of us thought Alec Pierce may have, but Downs is the one that's been getting the most points behind Pittman. And then Bigsby's the other one, but I think he's been retaxied by Luke, so obviously not. He's never going to be a starting player unless something happens to Henry. Tank Bigsby. Sorry, the other one.
Bigsby.
The Titans running back. Spears. Apologies. But yeah,
who I emphasise, just in case anyone's watching this and Spears has, or I don't know, there's some rumour that Henry's going to be eased out and Spears going to come in. Everyone needs to know that Tyjae Spears doesn't have an ACL in one of his
Luke
knees.
didn't know that, by the way. I did tell him.
So in terms of his long-term upside, you have to be very careful.
Yeah.
Just give him a new one. It'll be fine.
Who are your standout players for Aiden this week, Johnny? Very quickly.
Look, I think that there continues to be promise. It wasn't a good week. Dak Prescott having a bit of a second half of the season resurgence is a good thing, because even next season he's probably, if he wants to compete properly, he's going to need a solid backup behind Richardson, and Prescott would be amongst the very best backups in the league. So that's very encouraging. A few underperformances from his starters, but none of us need to know that DK Metcalf's good and T. Higgins is good, and Tank Dell's shown some big flashes already, and he's playing for the Texans. So it's going to be a hot and cold week in, week out. A really positive note was Roschon Johnson. Roschon Johnson, if you look just at their stat lines, it looks like it was a complete three-way split. And obviously, I think there was some other random running back. Was it Darrington Evans?
Darrington Evans.
But yeah. the key thing was that during that game, when it was the bit of the game where the Bears were actually competing, Roschon Johnson was getting most of the snaps. And I don't think there's much doubt in my mind that as the season goes on, this was he was the snap leader, and it was his first game back from a nasty concussion. So I think over the next few weeks, Aiden may well find himself with a solid start-worthy running back there, who's shown his ability in the passing game. So that's good. I think that Aiden's got a lot of work. Obviously, the real-life trade deadline's passed. Our trade deadline hasn't. And I think that as teams kind of go down the path that maybe Ronnie's had to, where you think about, what am I doing? Am I actually going to compete? Am I not? Particularly as some teams who are planning to compete really equip themselves with some excellent reinforcements, then there's quite a few teams who could turn to Aiden and pick up, that fourth or fifth choice wide receiver to ensure that they don't get down and have no one worth playing in the playoffs. And particularly for a bit of later round draft capital, it's worth it if you're trying to contend. And I think from Aiden's perspective, he can probably put in the towel now and start to collect what future capital he can.
One win. Not looking great. And then finally, for the week, we've got 5 minutes left to your basketball draft, but a game that I went to bed thinking I'd lost, and I was very angry about it. Because all I needed was Tyson Magic just dump off a screen to DJ Moore for 10 yards, and I would have won without what I'm assuming was an adjustment to TJ Edwards' tackle count. I don't think it was anything else. But yeah.
Brutal.
It's amazing.
So brutal.
It's not our closest.
Is it the closest game ever?
Let's consult the Wikipedia, Johnny.
What's it here close.
For?
I mean, technically there was a draw in last year's final, but
1 second.
In terms of actual scoring,
playoff records. We had a 105.8 to 105.6. Which
no, because this isn't even point. This is to the hundredths.
So this will be the tightest regular season defeat, yeah.
It would have been
LEG.
One yard.
Absolutely brutal.
The team.
Well, shall we blitz through pretty quickly? What I've realised, Lucas, is we're playing each other next week, and I'm very happy because not only you don't have Kittle. You don't have Kittle, and most of your team are Rams receivers. So it's very nice for me that they're gonna. Who's the quarterback for the Rams?
Oh, Brett Rippon. Yeah, be scared.
Not Stetson Bennett.
No, Stetson's at home. He's had some sort of issue.
Wow.
Personal issue.
This is your chance.
Yeah, exactly.
Will I be facing Will Levis next week?
I feel like I'm gonna stick with Sam Howell. 30-point game, can't drop the man. I mean, maybe I take the loss though and just rest all the boys. Get players like Samaje Perine a bit of game time. For
at quarterback.
Yeah, at quarterback maybe.
Wildcat.
No, obviously, like I think I will play Hal, but I'm not confident of victory. I'm projected, I believe, 30 less points than you this week. So we'll have to see if it's a bit closer than that, hopefully. But yeah, I mean, the only hope is that Brett Rippon just keeps slinging it at Keeper Cup and Puka Nakua with no hope in the world. But I don't care if the team wins. So I just hope they get like a few points each. So
yeah. How are you feeling about Will Levis?
So his arm is unbelievable. Like that touchdown he threw and on the back foot to Westbrook's. I can't say his name. Westbrook Smith. Yes, the one when he was like doing a deep crosser to the left side of the field. He just basically just flicked it, and it went like 50 yards into a bucket. That was fantastic. Like that's obviously his strength is attacking the deep portion of the field. I see you guys looking onto ESPN for your basketball draft.
I've just realised I'm third overall pick, and we're starting in a minute. And I have not looked at the NBA since last January.
Wemby looks good, guys. Wemby looks good. Let's put it that way. But yeah,
no, he's a rookie though. You can't take them high; they don't get the usage.
Wemby will. He's actually the best player immediately.
Wemby.
Yeah, but
right. Let's talk about. Unless you had anything more to say about Levis, let's talk about the Bates bang averages quickly.
Yeah, I think that he may not continue that exact form throughout every game.
Oh, Levis, yeah.
So that was my point.
Certain. But he's shown a ceiling that we didn't know he would have, and there's lots of rookies who never show that kind of ceiling. Exactly. So I think it's a massive.
It was promising, but I'm tempering my expectations. Is the gist.
Yeah.
But I did take him on the taxi squad so we can get claimed for a second. So
yeah, in terms of Bates, and I can confirm, Lucas, lots of people were putting in claims for him even after he'd left your taxi squad because everyone was so keen to take him.
So it was a wise call then, taking him off.
Oh my god! All right, our draft has started, Lucas. You're going to have to take
us
through.
Guys, while they're making their picks, I'll talk you guys through the James Bates bang averages side. Obviously, Josh Dobbs. Another good performance for the Arizona Cardinals. His last though in the red and black for the Arizona. So he's just been traded to the Minnesota Vikings. I think he may continue that. I have to say, maybe not week in week out. But he's got a good group of receivers in Minnesota who can score him some good points, and obviously he has that rushing upside as well, which Big Kirko did not have. Bijan wasn't ill this week, unlike myself. And him and Derrick Henry both seem to just be clocking in sort of 10 to 12 points a week. Garrett Wilson had an up week for himself. He got 100 yards which is infinitely more than the entire Giants offense has because they had -6. So there literally is impossible to quantify how many more yards Garrett Wilson had than the Giants offense. Marquise Brown doing his thing. I was gutted when he got a garbage time touchdown. I was like, but luckily TJ Edwards and his tackling saved me. Jahan Dotson was a big name in the preseason. Everyone was looking to trade for him. I know he was big buy candidate. This is the first time he's broken 10 points in the whole season, and it required a touchdown. So better. But the Washington team did have a good performance against Philly, which is weird. They've done that twice now, where they've scored 30+ points on Philly.
Who do I take? Right, interjection.
Go then.
Just take Giannis. Just take Giannis.
I don't want Giannis. I think I'm going to take. I'm going to take Luka.
Okay. Sure.
Does Giannis have the position flexibility? He can play like any forward.
He plays power forward or centre.
Just take Giannis. Just take Giannis.
Nah, man.
Okay.
Yeah, overthink it. Sure.
No, I'm taking Doncic. I'm taking Doncic.
Purely on emotion in this job.
But yeah, that's pretty much it for the bang averages. Do you guys want to do a matchup of the week for next week real quick, or are you a bit occupied?
Can I do mine? I'll do Power Rangers versus the Weight Wobblers.
Oh, yes. Tank Bowl.
The Tank Bowl. The wooden spoon has already kicked off.
Projected between them 140 odd points, which is fantastic.
Jesus Christ.
Actually, to be fair, Ronnie doesn't have a kicker or a defense in his team right now because the Niners are on bye, so he needs to find someone to come play for him.
Giannis went 6th overall. Jesus.
He's dropped.
The Wizard sleeves took Steph Curry at 4th. Damn.
You got anyone you want to pick out, Rob, matchup wise?
Yeah, I'll go Greenwood Grenadiers against Bates Bang averages.
Oh yeah, to
Interesting.
playoff
Big
team
game,
mission wise.
actually.
Back wins.
Yeah, Bates won't be too comfortable about falling to 3 and 6 if he does. Is he in where is he in his? He's bottom of the win
He's
division.
bottom, but he's Ramsey's kind of. He's had a couple of weeks where he looked like he was about to win and then lost right at the last minute. And
Yeah, a bit
Ramsey's
gassing
been kind
fraud.
of starting to drop. So I think he's got a very solid chance of making it. What with the two teams ahead of him kind of struggling to form a bit, and Charlie's had a couple of last minute wins and obviously lost his QB now. So I don't think he needs to give up hope.
And on that note, Christou. I do many apologies, Lucas, if it is wrong. I don't even know it could be wrong to this point. He is playing Ramsey this week, which is the third place team he needs to catch. So there you go. He can get the job started nice and early in his own hands. So, yeah.
Charlie is playing Ben. Did anyone mention that matchup yet?
No, not yet.
So that's an exciting one because basically Charlie with his last minute kind of wins. If it's another opportunity for Ben's winning streak to be broken, is it going to happen?
Who actually did beat Ben? Was it you, Johnny?
It was not me. I haven't played him yet.
Let's have a look who it was. I actually have no idea. It feels like week 6 it happened. He lost by a point to Greenwood. That's what it was.
Whoa.
There you go. But anyway, that pretty much wraps it up, I think, guys. There's the standings as we are. Earth Division is led by myself. Just thought I'd bring that up. Greenwood second, Heartthrobs in third. Pond Power Rangers bring up the rear. Meanwhile, the Wind Division, Tyranny has returned to the Wind Division as the Heart Hogs lead the way at 5 and 3. Merciful Suppliers, quite a strong division though overall, as Ramsey Writers and Bates Bang averages are not far away from 500 themselves. And then the Fire Division looking a bit bleak towards the bottom half, and even their second place team is one of the lowest scorers in the whole league. Bit unfortunate for the two bottom teams, as Lucas scored 100 points less almost than Lucas, but he's got 3 more wins than him. Some call it luck, but you make your own luck in this game. But you don't really. You just hit your player in the week, isn't it? So the bottom half not as great. One of them's thrown in the towel. That's Ronnie. But with Lucas is seemingly, as we've discussed, very much still in the running for that final third place spot. But that's weeks away still. We've got 7 or 8 weeks for it still. 6 weeks. It's 14 games and we've played 8, so 6 weeks left. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're over halfway into our season. For the regular season. So yeah, very much looking forward to see how the next week goes. But just over an hour here, boys. Well done. All right, see you all next week.